I've never found a more accurate description of the manic pixie dream girl trope.
Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name's Emma and today we're going to be reading John Green books for the first time. Now, first I think I need to explain myself. I was never really a John Green girl. I was more of a YA fantasy girly, so I completely missed out on reading his books. I asked some people on my Instagram what books I should read and in what order, so I settled on reading Looking for Alaska first, followed by The Fault in Our Stars, and then Turtles All the Way Down. I've seen quite a lot of consumerism on YouTube in general, but also BookTube, so I just wanted to highlight that I got a copy of Turtles All the Way Down and The Fault in Our Stars, both from my local library. I got a physical book of The Fault in Our Stars and then kind of didn't finish it in time, so then got the ebook and also got the ebook of Turtles All the Way Down. I also got my copy of Looking for Alaska from a charity shop for £1, so I just wanted to highlight that reading can be totally affordable. If you've got a local library, please use it. They're so useful, honestly. They're amazing. A lot of the ones in the UK now also have apps so that you can download ebooks and audiobooks, which is just fantastic, and that's the app I used to read Turtles All the Way Down at the end of The Fault in Our Stars. I do have my Instagram link below if you want to vote for other video concept ideas or books that I should read for certain authors. I do definitely have one coming up for Colleen Hoover and Madeline Miller, so if that's something you'd be interested in, feel free to give my Instagram a follow down below. And with all that said, let's just jump into it. Hi guys, so I'm about 60 pages in and it's interesting. So I knew nothing of the plot going in and it seems like there's not really a lot of plot. Sort of rough story is that Miles is a loner boy and the book's written from his point of view, and he has been suffering at school a little bit, not really making many friends, and he decides that he's going to go to this boarding school really far away down south that his father used to go to, and he moves to this school. So we sort of pick up his commentary just before he moves to the school and as he's moving to the school. So far in the 60 pages I've read, we've got to meet a couple of the kids, and it seems like there's a sort of class divide in the school. So there's some people called the weekday warriors who basically come in for the weekdays and they go home on the weekends, so they're very air-conditioned mansions and they don't stay in the not great dorm rooms. And then you've got the people that are the boarders, that are from a lower class. So far we've met Alaska and we've met Chip, or the Colonel, who is Miles's roommate, and I'm not really sure about either of these characters yet. Please don't hate me. First of all, the Colonel is kind of a not great nickname. My main problem with the Colonel is he keeps making slightly misogynistic comments about Alaska behind her back, but also to Alaska and about his girlfriend. And he's also kind of horrible to his girlfriend. And Alaska, I'm going through I don't like her, I do like her kind of phase. My sort of main issue with Alaska isn't really Alaska herself, it's the way she's portrayed through Miles's eyes, because we're reading from Miles's point of view. So I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the manic pixie dream girl, but it's something that's sort of explored within film quite a lot. And the idea of this trope is basically like white middle class man who is kind of depressed or a loner and isn't really experiencing life properly, and then we have this girl enter his life and basically become a sort of love interest for him, but the purpose of this girl is to be a romantic interest to this man, and there's not really any other characteristics about her. She has other characteristics, but it's all for the sort of sole purpose of bringing this man out of his shell. Basically, the whole manic pixie dream girl trope is inherently sexist because it's reducing a female character basically to a object. This is kind of the vibe that I'm getting from Looking for Alaska so far. I'm trying to like her. She is the only female character in the book we really sort of get to see, so I kind of hope I like her. I would really like to like her. My feminist side wants to like her, but I'm just not quite there yet. I've just got to about 100 pages in and we found out that Alaska basically was the rat, and I just realised that I didn't really probably explain anything to do with the rat and that sort of plot point, so I'm just going to give it a go here. Basically, when Miles comes and moves in with the Colonel, he is pranked, I think in his first or his second night there, and he's basically in his boxers taken down to the lake, and apparently they usually do this to new kids but they just throw them in. But what they actually did with Miles is they duct taped all of his arms and legs together so he couldn't really swim, and then threw him in the lake so he nearly died. The reason behind this is there's 2 kids that got expelled who were part of the Weekday Warriors crowd. They got expelled last year because they were doing drugs and having sex in one of the dorm rooms. And there's this culture at the school of don't rat. They think that the colonel ratted them out, so they were punishing his roommate, which is just kind of a bit weird considering he's new at the school. But anyway, so we just found out that actually the colonel wasn't the rat, but Alaska was the rat. This doesn't really do any favours for a character for me, to be honest. Also, she said quite a few concerning things, such as like, you smoke to enjoy it, I smoke to die. Because I'm 22, I guess I have a little bit more like experience with that sort of stuff, but if someone was to say that and behave like Alaska does in quite an erratic way, where she's kind of up and down, I would probably try and get her to see someone, even if it's just a counsellor. I know that when you're a teenager you say a lot of like emo stuff, we've all been that teenager, but that sort of struck me as a bit like, maybe you should get her some help. Another thing that I'm not really keen on with Alaska is she's very hot and cold with Miles. I don't know if Alaska's only really being hot and cold because we're seeing her through the lens of Miles. So even though she has a boyfriend, maybe we're sort of seeing him misread situations because it's sort of more from his point of view. It's not even that I don't like Miles, I'm ambivalent towards Miles. Miles is just your typical white, entitled teenage 15-year-old boy. All of Miles' personality is, I'm kind of upset that I can't have sex with Alaska because she's got a boyfriend. And also what I just noticed, and I feel really embarrassed for only just noticing this now, all of the chapters are titled 58 days before, like 100 days before. And my question is, before what? Title suggests like looking for Alaska, that maybe she runs away. What's the main event that focuses a story? What's the before? And I'm assuming based on the length of this book there's probably going to be an after as well. So I don't know what the event is that separates the before and the after, so I guess we'll see what that is. So I just finished the before section of the book and I've not read the after section yet, and it kind of ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, which I'll discuss in a little bit. But firstly, what I was wanting to say is I actually started liking the characters towards the end of the before section. I really liked that Miles had sort of developed this relationship with Lara. I thought it was healthier than the one him and Alaska could ever have. I sort of got to understand the colonel and a bit more of a sense of humour. Still not really keen on the misogyny, but the scenes at Thanksgiving and with his mum sort of made up for that. It sort of made me quite like his character. Just basically before the end of the before section, they all made me hate them again. Maybe not the colonel as much as Miles and Alaska. Just before the end of the before section, Alaska and Miles have been drinking and Alaska hooks up with Miles, and on this day he's also made it official earlier on with Lara, his sort of new girlfriend. This culminates in Alaska getting quite upset and Miles and the colonel letting her drive away, but also deciding that they're going to sell firecrackers as they've done for like a couple of pranks before to distract the caretaker. So they run about drunk and sell firecrackers so that Alaska doesn't attract any attention from the caretaker when she's driving away drunk. I'm now not really sure if Alaska runs away or if she dies. I guess we'll see in the after section. I'm really hoping she hasn't died, but we'll see. So I just finished looking for Alaska. Not entirely sure how I felt about this book. I know so many people love it, but I think it was just filled with too many sort of problematic male-gazy stereotypes for me. My main problem with this book is that Alaska dies. It's not the fact that just Alaska died. I have no problem with authors killing off characters. It's that it felt like Alaska's death in this book was solely there to benefit Miles and the colonel. So John Green killed off his Manic Pixie Dream Girl character to help male characters find meaning in life. And the sexist undertones of that, it's the Manic Pixie Dream Girl trope before it was even coined. I've never found a more accurate description of the Manic Pixie Dream Girl trope. I was hoping to like my first John Green book. We're reading The Fault in Our Stars next, and I've enjoyed that movie. I've watched that movie twice. I'm hoping that I'll love the book even more. Hi guys, so today we're going to be starting on The Fault in Our Stars, and I'm really excited to get into this. Obviously I wasn't the biggest fan of Looking for Alaska, but I know that I'll probably like The Fault in Our Stars, and I've heard that you relate to the characters a lot more in the book than you do in the film. I'm ready to cry. I don't know why I look so happy in the thumbnail. I'm ready to be wrecked. And with that, I guess let's get into it. So I just started The Fault in Our Stars. I'm about 40 pages in so far, and I can already tell you that I love it so much more than Looking for Alaska. I'm loving the characters so far. Hazel and Augustus have the best chemistry. My favourite scene so far is the one with Augustus's dad. I just think it's so funny. Hazel goes over to Augustus's house and Augustus is like, "Can we watch a movie downstairs in the basement?" i.e. his bedroom. And the dad's like, "No, you can watch it in the living room." So much like dad energy. You're not going to be watching this movie in your bedroom, you're going to be watching it in the living room with the door open, young man. It was just such a lovely moment to see Augustus interact like that with his family, because we don't really see a lot of interactions between Augustus and his family in the movie. The characters seem a lot more real, a lot more three-dimensional in the book, and I'm just so excited to read more. I'll update you guys when I'm a little bit further in. So I just got back in from walking my dogs and I curled back up with more stars. I'm on page 90 about now, and Augustus is taking her to Amsterdam, and I know exactly what happens in Amsterdam and I am on the verge of tears. Book Augustus is so much better than movie Augustus. Book Augustus is like definitely the guy that would 100% read feminist literature, but you would just like go into his room and he'd be reading it. Like, you wouldn't have to ask him, he'd just be reading it because he's interested, and I 100% get that vibe and respect that vibe and love that vibe for him. He is just that guy. Compared to any of the male characters in Looking for Alaska, Augustus is like a 15 out of 10. And the fact that he's just so respectful of Hazel and in general such a nice guy. Please someone take me to Amsterdam. Maybe don't kiss me in the Anne Frank Museum though, because in the movie that seems kind of weird. Not sure if it happens in the book, but I guess I'm hoping it's less weird in the book if it happens in the book. So I'll check in with you guys when I have some more thoughts. Hi guys! I took a break from The Fault in Our Stars yesterday because it was really quite sunny and I was out sort of doing things with my parents and the dogs. I did read last night up until Augustus and Hazel went to Amsterdam, and I decided that was a good place to leave it so that I would be able to sleep. And I picked it up again this morning and we read a little bit more about Amsterdam, so I'm just going to share my thoughts on that. First of all, reading about Hazel's time in the ICU in the book rather than the film was really difficult. It felt a lot longer in the book than it seemed to be in the film. And also Augustus's argument with his mum before they're heading out to go to the airport. I'm pretty sure I know what that is about, and that was heartbreaking. Hazel has no idea yet that Augustus's cancer is back. That's probably the point where I'm going to start absolutely sobbing, if I'm honest, and I think that will pretty much continue towards the end of the book. I will be proud of myself if I manage to hold off crying until we get to the scene where Augustus announces that he's sick again. If I manage to hold off crying until that point, I will count this as a win. Also, Augustus' love confession when they're on the plane, it was so over the top, it was so Augustus, and it was so cute. A part of the book that isn't really in the movie is the fact that Hazel looks a little bit like Augustus's girlfriend who died of a brain tumour, and that kind of freaked me a little bit towards the start of the book, and then I decided I just wasn't going to think about it. But they explain it a little bit more at this point. After reading that, I think it's not as weird as I thought it was when I originally read it at the start. Anyway, I think that's my thoughts on this part of the book. Stay tuned to probably see me descend into a sobbing mess. Okay, so I didn't last until Augustus told Hazel his cancer is back. I actually started crying at the scene in the Anne Frank house. That's a scene in the film where I've not seen the film in a while, but I remember feeling that the scene in the film was a bit odd. But in the book, it's heartbreaking, it's heart-wrenching, and it's absolutely essential, and I completely see why it's in the book. And this was like the dark horse sad scene for me. And then the way that Augustus tells Hazel in the book is slightly different to in the film as well. I cried at that as well. More of just the continuation of the crying, if I'm honest. Also, I didn't think it was possible for the author to be worse than he was in the film, but he was worse than he was in the film. So I still got a little tiny bit left of the book. I'm gonna sign off for now, go finish the book, and probably curl up in a ball and cry. I just finished The Fault in Our Stars book and it destroyed me. and I loved it. It was a 5-star read for me. Obviously last time I updated you I hadn't read through Augustus's death, so I'm just going to give you some quick updates and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I thought about the book overall. I kind of stopped crying when they were egging Monica's house and I was like, this is fine. But it was like the this is fine dog meme. I was like, this is fine. And then it kind of started again as Augustus was dying. There were a couple of quotes that just sort of increased the sobbing. I took a note of some of the quotes that really hit me in that last little bit of the book. I'm just going to read some of them to you so that you can cry with me. When Augustus and Hazel went back to the play park that was dinosaur themed and like bone themed, Augustus says, last time we were here I imagined myself as one of the kids and this time I'm imagining myself as a skeleton, and that killed me. Also the line just let me fucking die when he calls Hazel when he's outside the car in the garage. Another line that sort of had me crying, curled up in a little ball, was I don't want to see a world without him, from Isaac. Hazel's entire eulogy also killed me. One of the lines that hit the worst was the only person I wanted to talk to about Augustus Waters' death was Augustus Waters, and I think anyone that's ever been like truly in love and then went through a really bad breakup can relate to this, because the only one you want to talk about the bad breakup to is your other half, your best friend that you're no longer together with, and that's only a fraction of, I guess, what Hazel was going through at that point. And then obviously Hazel had overheard her mum earlier in the book saying that when Hazel died she wouldn't be a mum anymore, which was such a heartbreaking line. They have a conversation about it after Augustus has died. Her mum basically says, I will always be your mum, Hazel, and that, it honestly, it touched my heart, it killed me, that line. I can't imagine what it must be like having a child with cancer and knowing that you're going to outlive them. My final thoughts on The Fault in Our Stars is that it is a fantastic novel, absolutely astounding. It's a 5 out of 5 if I've ever came across it, a 5 out of 5. It is a book that I think I will be going back to, and it is an absolute masterpiece. Wouldn't change a word, would not change a word of that novel. So I'm going to go take a bit of an emotional break before I start Turtles All the Way Down. So now we're going to be reading Turtles All the Way Down. I'm hoping this is more of a The Fault in Our Stars book rather than a Looking for Alaska book. I know nothing really going into this. All I know is it's one of John Green's newer books, so I kind of wanted to pick one of his newer books and then a couple of his older books so I can maybe try and see how his writing's progressed, or if the way that he writes his female characters has progressed. I say that, I didn't like Alaska, but I loved Hazel. Hazel was great. We love Hazel. We'll see what Turtles All the Way Down is about. That's only about 60 pages in. I am loving this so far. I wasn't really quite sure after the first couple of pages. The first couple of pages were a lot of anxiety-ridden descriptions of life like bacteria, and it turns out that our main character Holmesy has anxiety, and that anxiety manifests in a way where she keeps pressing her finger into her thumb basically to create a cut. She worries that this cut is going to be infected by bacteria, and then she basically squeezes lots of blood out of the cut because she thinks it's infected and sort of pours hand sanitizer on it and everything. That's not nice. I actually do have anxiety myself. I have my old clinical anxiety, and I have anti-anxiety meds that I take during periods of high stress. So reading this for me wasn't nice, it wasn't great, but it did also show John Green's talent for writing and writing neurodivergent characters, which I haven't experienced before from him, and it's actually been quite nice to see his take on an anxiety character, and I think it's written very well. Just do be aware though that if you do have severe anxiety, that Holmesy's narration style in general might actually be a trigger for you. Out with Holmes's narration style, the plot of this book is actually really interesting as well, at least so far. We follow Holmesy and Daisy through day at school and everything, and then it comes to light that someone that Holmesy used to sort of be childhood friends with turns out to be a billionaire's son, and the billionaire's just been done for tax fraud, and has completely disappeared, evading police arrest. And there is a manhunt going on for them, and the reward for information to the police is £100,000. So Daisy and Holmesley, the narrator's friend, decides that they're going to try and find out about this billionaire and where he is through the son of Davis. And they paddle down this river in the canoe, and they sort of get out near his grounds, and Holmesley remembers that there's a night vision camera that the boys had set up when they were a lot younger. It's Bluetooth, and they connect to it and they find pictures of the billionaire leaving the property via the forest. This is information that the police don't have yet. Daisy is keen to hand this over to the police, but before they can get off of the property, they're apprehended by security, and security figures out that Holmesley knows Davis, so takes her to Davis, and they sort of reconnect from there. Daisy implies that they were there to see if Davis was okay after what had been going on, because Holmesley had a childhood crush on him. I am a sucker for friends to lovers, especially if they've been like maybe childhood friends but haven't seen each other. Sucker for that trope, so we're loving that. But I'm so excited to see where this goes. I think it's such an interesting introduction. Davis really gave Holmesley $100,000, which is a lot of money. Basically because he was like, I think you might be after the reward money, which was also $100,000. And I really quite like you and I'd like to get to know you more, but I don't want to keep worrying that you're around for the money. So my dad keeps a bunch of cash stashed around the house because obviously the dad is a billionaire that's dodgy. He finds $100,000 like hidden in a cereal box and gives it to Holmesley. On top of that, we found out that Davis is kind of glad that his dad's gone. His dad wasn't a really great dad to them, but his younger brother Noah really misses his dad and is constantly sort of asking Holmesley to look into these clues that were sort of left in the dad's phone notes. Really interesting so far, really interesting. I'm excited to read more. I'm reading on the balcony because it's actually gotten a bit brighter. I just got to the part where Holmesley and Daisy are in a car accident after she's basically had an anxiety break. It was horrible to read, absolutely horrible. One of the reasons behind Holmesley's anxiety attack was that she'd finally read her friend Daisy's fan fictions. She writes Chewbacca and Ray fanfic, and she reads it, and there is a character that's sort of named after her that has really strong anxiety, and she always seems to muck up all of the missions, and she just seems to be annoying, and she thinks this is her friend sees her and gets quite upset, but I have a feeling that they'll make up. Okay, so I finished Turtles all the way down, and I really want to riot. Holmesley and Davis don't end up together, and I hate this, and I hate John Green. I love this book. I totally get why he didn't make them end up together, because there's a lot of commentary on like life and love and first loves at the end, and all of the commentary was absolutely gorgeous. I just wish that Daisy and Holmesley had actually ended up together. That would have made the commentary even more gorgeous, I think. One of the best parts of this book, I think, is towards the end, where they're talking about sort of like life and the meaning of life and love. They mention the title of the book, and they mention it in the cutest way. They tell this story. There's this scientist, and he's giving a lecture basically about the Earth and the Earth's history and how we as humans got here. And there's an old woman that puts up her hand at the end when he's asking her questions. She says, the truth is, the Earth is a flat plane lying in the back of a giant turtle. The scientist responds, well, if that's so, what's the turtle standing on? And she basically goes on to say, Mr. Scientist, you don't understand, it's turtles all the way down. I just think that's interesting commentary and belief in religion. I really loved this. I really loved this book. So thank you for coming along on my John Green reading journey. I really enjoyed it overall. Although I wasn't the biggest fan of Looking for Alaska, I really did love Turtles All the Way Down and The Fault in Our Stars. I think The Fault in Our Stars will become a go-to reread for me, especially when I'm in the mood for a good cry. If you'd like a part 2 to this, I'm always happy to do one. I know that John Green has some other books. I know he's got another newer one, and I've also heard that An Abundance of Catherines is meant to be very good. I have heard Paper Towns is very similar to Looking for Alaska, so I might not be the biggest fan, but I'm always willing to give it a try. If you'd like a part 2, just leave a comment down below. If not, I definitely have some videos in the work for Colleen Hoover and Madeline Miller, as they're both authors I've never read before. I'd also love to hear some of your thoughts about all of the books I've read today from John Green. Do you love Looking for Alaska? Do you hate Looking for Alaska? Are you in love with The Fault in Their Stars just like I am? What was your thoughts of Turtles All the Way Down? Let me know. I'd be really happy to hear all of your opinions in the comments. But for now, that's me.